Members, members, members. I've got someone coming in. Thank you all for coming, and welcome to the Environment and Climate Change Committee. Over to you.
Can I draw members' attention, can I draw everyone's attention to page 3 of the agenda, which sets out details regarding fire safety instructions and the webcasting arrangements. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in the market car park adjacent to the Civic Suite building. Please do not return to the building unless given permission by staff, council staff. Thank you.
The first item is apologies for absence and substitute members. We have apologies from Councillor Cross, Councillor Efty, and the substitute is Councillor Angelina Marriott. Thank you. Item 2, the minutes of the meeting held on 18th of September. Are the minutes agreed, members? Thank you. Item 3 is to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. Item 4 is public questions on notice. We have received one question from a member of the public, which was circulated to you separately and is on page 3 of the supplementary agenda. It's from Carol Shawnee. Mrs. Shawnee, would you please make your way over to the microphone?
Hello, can you hear me? Thank you. Good evening. Subject of food, Professor Paul Berence said recently in the National Climate Emergency at Westminster, this was last week, we are woefully unprepared for the collapse of global food supplies in the face of accelerating climate change and nature loss. He said, we know that healthy soils store water and carbon. So why, therefore, is Rochford District Council still acting as though everything is normal, when now is the time to start acting to protect our farmers' livelihoods and the precious land they cultivate? Or are developers still calling the shots? My supplementary question. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Shawnee. The Council is aware of the importance of biodiversity and nature restoration as set out in our sustainability strategy. We recognise the pressure on land use for housing, biodiversity and nature recovery, renewable energy, food production and leisure pursuits. With respect to the new housing, the government has introduced new planning criteria for biodiversity net gain for all new sites. This means that all new housing must make a material improvement in nature and biodiversity to the sites they develop. The Council fully supports Essex's Nature Recovery Strategy, released this summer, and have recently recruited a new corporate management post responsible for biodiversity and climate change in the district. The Council is also preparing a climate adaptation strategy with a focus on nature-based solutions. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. My supplementary question is, shouldn't the Environment and Climate Change Committee now be more proactive, even advising other committees? Professor Paul Berence's video is absolutely devastating, and he warns a food supply crisis could cause civil unrest in the UK within the next decade, according to 40% of food security experts. The UK's 3 worst harvests on record have occurred in the past 5 years. 80% of British farmers say climate change is seriously threatening their ability to make a living. And 54% of food that ends up on Britain's plates is grown in the UK, and 25% of food imported comes from the Mediterranean, a climate change hotspot. In conclusion, yesterday evening, the words climate change, food security, farmland, farmers, agriculture were all missing. Is there a reason for this? Thank you.
I'm not able to answer all of those questions immediately. We can prepare an answer for you with consultation with the officers, but a lot of what you're asking is out of the remit of this committee. We do deal with the environment, but only in the areas that we have some control over. So we will prepare a more detailed answer for you, but a lot of it is not within the remit of this council. So, but we will come back to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Gooding.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can the answers be shared with the committee, please? Thank you.
Item 5 is the Chair's update, and the report begins on page 11. This report provides an update to members in relation to areas covered under the terms of reference of the Environment and Climate Change Committee. Is there any questions on the Chair's update, members? Okay, that report is for noting. Is it noted? Thank you. Item 6 is the 2025 to 26 Q2 performance, and the report begins on page 17. The report informs members of the performance of the council at the end of quarter 1, 25 to 26, in relation to places and spaces theme of the council's corporate plan. Do we have any questions on this report?
Thanks, Chair. It's not a question as such, it's just an observation really that as the report was produced, it's actually quite difficult to read the PDF document because some of it's cut off on paginations. I don't know whether we can look at that going forward just to make it easier to read.
Members, this report is for noting. Is it noted? Thank you. Item 7 is the Cherry Orchard Jubilee Country Park Management Plan, and the report begins on page 31. This report provides an updated management plan for the country park and seeks to undertake public consultation prior to its approval. This report also highlights the key capital projects requested to be delivered over the next 5 years and to seek match funding with the Friends of Cherry Orchard Country Park. This is an updated report following the work undertaken by the member working group and outlines amendments and additions put forward by the group. I do have a question from Councillor Eaves, who was hoping to be here but has a family engagement. And that question is, the working group requested officers draw up a policy for events on the park, as there's never been one, and it needs to be an integral part of the management plan. Clarity is needed for the potential events sponsors and businesses looking to do any events on the licensed area of the park to be able to give due consideration to the possibility of hiring the space. Hiring of the event space has the potential to be a revenue stream for the council and a chance to elevate Rochford District tourism offering. I therefore ask the committee to consider the following additional recommendations to the report. 1. Officers to formulate a full policy on use of the event space as part of the COCP management plan, that's the Cherry Orchard Country Park plan, and update it to the committee before the end of the current municipal year. Brackets to be done in conjunction with the Economic Development, Regeneration and Tourist Committee. 2. To add an inclusion in the aims and objectives to promote the event space in the park and carry out upkeep appropriate to the designation of that area. He also acknowledges that there has been a very recent agreement to install power and water to the area of the event space. Councillor Houghton, Mr. Houghton, do you have anything to add?
I do, thank you. Good evening, members. I think in discussion with Councillor Reeves, although I welcome the detail that he's put forward, I do wonder about the timing. So I think my concern was that at the moment this is just a draft management plan that we're putting out to consultation with the public. I think that what Councillor Reeves has put forward is quite prescriptive, and almost then you would ask why you're going out to consultation if you're going to that kind of detail of prescription that we are going to do this policy and we are going to do that. So I think it's too detailed. I think it's certainly worth considering in the final version. So I think that's something we can take into the version that comes back to members to consider. But I think we need to also then, in the round, have comments from residents and the users of the park as well. So certainly the Friends group welcome some events, but perhaps don't welcome some of the more commercial events. So I think you've got to weigh up the comments from perhaps some of the councillors and also some of the users of the park as well. I think that what Councillor Reeves is putting has merit, and I personally support some of what he's putting forward. I think it's the timing is wrong. I think that's my main concern. So I mean, there are a broad objective to say develop and promote a sustainable event programme. So I think there is something already that captures that in a very broad sort of umbrella, but I think going into more prescriptive recommendations at this stage is almost writing the management plan before we've actually had a chance to go out to consultation with the public. So that's my view on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Houghton. I know this is early stages now, but the events that are going to be there, I've heard that this is an income generator, but we've got to balance that up against environmental danger, or environmental harm rather. So will there be an environmental assessment of each event in the future?
I think that's where possibly, I think again, a renewed events policies come to this committee in the near future would be useful. So I think that's, you could argue that's something we should consider for any event on any of our open spaces, that they are sustainable in nature, but also we do consider the other impacts, and that could be environmental, or it could be an effect in terms of noise, nuisance, that sort of thing. So I would expect to see that in any event that we consider that, but I think that's merits for bringing forward an actual review of the event policy rather than trying to tuck it inside the management plan, if that makes sense.
Members, if there's no further questions, I will move the recommendation set out on page 31 of the report, which is R1, to approve that a public consultation is undertaken on the draft Cherry Orchard Jubilee Country Park Management Plan 2025 to 2030 as appended to this report, which is Appendix A. R2, to report back into the Environment and Climate Change Committee with recommendations on completion of this consultation. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Show of hands in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. That motion is carried. Item 8 is hydro-treated vegetable oil, which is HVO, pilot for the Rochford North diesel fleet. The report begins on page 77. The report sets out the business case and budget for a pilot scheme to switch from mineral diesel to HVO for the entire diesel fleet of vehicles at Rochford District Council. And I invite questions from committee members, please.
Thank you, Chair. With this scheme that's going to be tried, does this mean that the motors or the engines, do they need to be altered in any way? And also, could we have a breakdown of costs as we go along, 3 monthly breakdown or something like that, in relation to the costs? Because I do believe that the HVO is somewhat more expensive than diesel, and how that equates to our funds that we're using at the moment for diesel as opposed to HVO. Is that possible?
R2 gives you the budget approval for the diesel scheme, but I think Henry would like to say a bit more on the HVO fuel. Hear what Henry has to say first. Can you use the microphone next time?
Sorry, Chair. I would like it to be either quarterly or 4 monthly report on the HVO usage, as opposed to the diesel which we would normally use. Thank you.
Yes, we can do that. So what we'll do is we'll put it in the chair's updates each time. So I can do a running total for you for the year. But what we do is we'll bring in a report at the end of the year. I think looking at the broader, if you like, has any impact upon the performance of the vehicles, that sort of thing. But I think in terms of cost, I mean, I can drop almost like a couple of sentences into each chair's update. So that'd be quite easy to achieve.
Just on the, it's a direct fuel replacement, so you can actually mix mineral diesel with hydro-treated vegetable oil, so you don't even have to empty the bunded tanks. Because it's plant-based, it hasn't got mineral deposits in, which is basically what clogs up filters. It's the black, sooty debris from that. There's also 30% less nitrous oxide emissions, which are the PM10s, which are the really nasty small particles which cause the lung problems for kids. So it's win-win really, and we're on a year and a half now in Brentwood. There's been no issues, and the cost is approximately 15 to 20% more. So we can update the cost monthly or in the chair's update as suggested.
Councillor Marriott.
Chairman, the officer has answered my question. I was curious to know as to whether it had been successfully tried elsewhere. Thank you very much.
There is an expected savings on, as Henry said, on the filters on the lorries. At the moment, the cost of a diesel particulate filter on a lorry is a lot of money. It's a phenomenal amount. If we can save those filters less often, then there will be a cost saving on that. So overall, we will be able to look at the cost saving over the extra cost of the mineral oil. Councillor Lambourne.
Yeah, can somebody be more specific than a lot of money, please?
I think I'd have to come back to specifically on the amounts. I wouldn't want to sort of. I mean, DPFs can vary a great deal in cost. But I mean, I think it's something we've put in the report. So I'm slightly more cautious. I think I'm clear that there's a cost to introducing the fuel. I think the savings I haven't predicted any savings in terms of parts because I think we'd have to wait and see. There are anecdotal reports that perhaps they do produce less of an impact on the filters, but I've also heard some anecdotal reports that are almost the opposite of that. So I think what we'll do is that in a year's time we'll give them a full breakdown of where we think we are with those side of things. But I'm reluctant to predict any savings in terms of parts at this time.
So we're going into this without knowing the financials of the whole thing. It's just on a wing and a prayer. We're going to do it for a year and see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The reason that I ask these questions is that the vehicles that we use at the moment are diesel. And the whole thing has to be, I don't know, I'm asking for advice. Does that have to be cleaned out first so that you can use HVO? Or are we still, when we do burn the HVO on the vehicles, it is still producing the particles because the particles are still in the engine that you're burning and also in the filters. So are we replacing filters immediately because of that? Or are we washing the engines out so that we can use HVO? Because there is a cost to this, no matter what, there is a cost. And that's what my question is. Thank you.
So there's a premium, correct, there's a premium to the cost of the fuel, around 20% greater than for a litre of mineral diesel. But I mean, the two can be mixed together. So certainly our experience in Brentwood is we just literally switched the tanks over and start using HVO without any real notable difference in performance of the vehicles. But you don't have to flush the system through. You can even run on 50% mineral, 50% HVO if you wanted to, and some companies do that as well. So we didn't even have to clean the tanks out that we were emptying into. So if you imagine there's a little bit of mineral diesel left in those tanks initially as you work through, but you won't decoke the engine through running HVO. Yeah, no, it shouldn't have any. That's right. There's no particular impact. Thanks.
Councillor Gooding.
I believe Henry might have something to add to it which would help us understand more. But you did also allude, Henry, to some similar practice at Brentwood. Would that be able to give us some information?
I just think we should take a step back for a moment, and given we've had the sort of chat about the very mild weather that we're experiencing in the middle of December and the urgency of the National Emergency Board that was held on the day of the budget when they had 1,500 experts to talk about climate change. The most important thing this council can do is lead by example to slash carbon emissions. The biggest source of carbon emissions for this council is our vehicles, hundreds of thousands of litres of diesel that we burn every year. This measure alone will slash it by 30%. It will slash the carbon footprint of Rochford District Council by 30%. We're doing well. In the last 3 years, we've slashed it by 44% in 3 years. After this measure, we'll come back in a year and it will be 77% reduction, which is massive. We've done it for a year and a half in Brentwood. The chair of the Environment Committee loves telling everyone how they've slashed the emissions in 3 years by almost 80% because we've declared a climate emergency, and that's what we're doing. So I think there is an impact, but there's massive benefits, and we're doing as the members have asked us to do.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've listened to what the officers have said and the advice they've given, and have absolutely no hesitation in accepting this, and would like to recommend that we go straight to voting for this, please.
Right, if there's no more questions, then I will move the recommendations set out on page 77 of the report. R1 is to approve the business case for hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO, as set out in Appendix A to the report. R2, to approve a budget of 80,000 for a pilot scheme to provide additional payment to allow Rochford North to offset the increased cost of switching from mineral diesel to hydro-treated vegetable oil for the entire fleet of Rochford North vehicles. R3, to note that a further report will be presented on the progress of the pilot scheme to the committee in approximately 12 months' time. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gooding. Can I have a show of hands, please, for? Against? Abstain? Thank you. That motion has been carried. Item 9. Thank you, Henry. Safe journey home. Item 9, Ashington Hedgerow and Pollard Restoration Project. The report begins on page 89. The report outlines the proposals for the Hedgerow and Pollard Restoration Project at King George V Plainfields, Ashington. And I invite questions from members. Councillor Squires-Coleman.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, the proposed project looks very interesting and something that the obviously that area and we as a council need to promote and work on. However, I'm just asking a few questions that I know that the residents of around Holt Farm will be wondering. Can I ask officers, can I have an assurance that all options were considered to spending this money in the location where the loss originally occurred? Was any consideration given to consult with the ward councillors in the area or the residents for their views and for their local knowledge? I know there are quite a few groups who, when they hear this, will have some views on this and there might be some pushback. Does the council intend to inform the community of its decision and why it was reached? Also, is there a timescale for this project? Sorry, there's quite a few questions. And the last one that is sort of slightly off the topic but related. Is there an update on the wood from the oak tree and the making of a centrepiece on the development?
I should have written these down. I apologise. So I'll work backwards. So I shall find out for you about what happened to the wood. I do recollect. I remember that being agreed, didn't they? They were going to do a piece. So I shall contact planning officers and ask them to contact Bloor to get an update on that issue, and I'll circulate it around to the committee. In terms of timescale, I believe that's going to be this winter. We're looking to on the winter after. So the works. I think we do some of the preparation works this summer with a view to planting out next winter. So it's quite a long lead in time. I think this one's to be sort of clear. I think there are many options you can look at. It's a strange two pots of money in many ways. The 106 monies that were put aside for this. Often, if I'm being honest with the 106 monies, they're something quite challenging to discharge and spend in a good way. I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring this paper in, was so that people at least could have a view of how it could be spent. I think my concern is sometimes with 106 monies, they are almost spent without any sort of visible consultation or view for members, because once it always becomes an officer discharging function. It's a function of planning rather than the council. I know it's a slight change, slight subtlety there. So this is why we wanted to bring it to here. I think we had previously looked at options around trying to plant some larger trees closer to Holt Farm School. But it's remarkable how difficult that becomes because of the services that are under the sort of the roads there. So we identified a couple of spots there where we thought perhaps we could do a little bit more, but the cost, you know, was looking at extortionate for maybe 2 or 3 trees. The works we're having to do alongside Essex. So it's, I think, in many ways, I won't say this is only one option that can be considered that we put forward, but it's an easier one for us to deliver, one we're confident we can deliver because it's within our gift to do so. It's upon council land. I think some of the other options I wanted to look at involved Essex highways, and it becomes far more complex, unfortunately. You know, and so I just felt that there are trees planted already along the sort of verges. Clearly, Blore took a kind of a tree planting upon their own site, which is opposite there. We are looking to give monies to the school as well. I think mentions it in that report, and I felt that was as much as we could really do within the area. The closest area after that really that we have much control over is Ashington Park. Hence why we've kind of put this together. And in terms of, I mean, I think if I'm being brutally honest, yes, I think perhaps I should have consulted with all members. I think in hindsight. But yes, I think that's something I'm happy to look at, take away and look back and bring this report back in if that suits members.
Thank you so much for your answers. I really appreciate that. Can I just then have your assurance that every option has been looked into and this is the best option for the whole area of Rochford, that this money goes into that? It's the easiest, most cost-effective and most productive way of using this money?
That's a very encompassing statement. I might wriggle round this one a little bit. We've certainly considered some options. I mean, I think one of the frustrations are, and often you get this with 106 monies, is that they'll say they want them within a locality. So I think within that locality, I think this is certainly the best we can come. There may be options we've not thought of, which is why I wanted this to come forward. And if other committee members or people see this and say, actually, we think it's a better way of spending that money, then we are happy to hear of that. It's just, you know, are there more cost-effective ways of producing a good quality tree stock or creating a tree scape for the district? Then possibly if you looked wider, but then, you know, it's meant to be about Ashington. It's meant to be about that area. So it's a little bit harder to find suitable projects. I think that was my frustration. You know, we are where we are, unfortunately. The tree was a lovely tree, but the work cannot be done. You can't reproduce that tree. I don't think we ever pretended that we could, to be honest.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of observations here that you say greater value in reinvestment into local green infrastructure. I do hope they won't be whips of trees. I do hope that the infrastructure will be mature trees, at minimum of 5-year-old. That's what I read about whips. As we all know that the whips that have been planted by the council in conjunction with Essex people, 78% of those whips are dead. So unfortunately, that's the way whips grow. They don't grow very well in clay, unfortunately, but putting a mature tree in will have a root ball to it that will last perhaps a little bit longer than whips, and with a little bit of luck and good infrastructure to put that tree in, I think would work admirably well, as has been proven over at Swain Park by myself. So can we, apart from the pollard restoration project and Heathrow and hedgerows, can we see better planting put in place of whips? Because whips are, I mean, even if you put in a couple of good mature trees, they will survive. Whips will not survive. We know that 80%, and I've done this with yourselves, that whips do not survive in the ground that we've got. So we do need to make sure that those trees grow. Otherwise, we'll be replacing them forever and a day. And forever and a day, we can't do that. We need to do it once and once only and do it the correct way. Can I give your assurance that we will put in proper trees, not whips? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, you can have the assurance. Within the report, there is 9 super heavy standard trees. So they are very large trees that will come in at sort of 3 to 4 metre in height as part of the project. But there is whips as part of the project as well, because it's as much about the hedgerow restoration as it is the pollards and the trees. But what we have ensured within this report, where previously we was funded for the planting, and we've had the droughts, and it's unfortunate we have lost quite a lot of the whips planted, but there is a maintenance budget built into this to ensure that them whips will survive.
In reply to that, what you've just spoke about, the whips that have been planted, over 3,000 of those whips, they haven't been watered. They haven't had any help in growing, and I just wonder if it's really worth it putting these whips in when we should be really putting in some sort of mature trees. I really don't see that they are worth the effort that we're going to do. Thank you.
I do take your point. I think, but the difference will be because we're planting the mature standards, we're going to be going down to water those. We can water the whips at the same time. I think it's a bit cruel, but in many ways whips are expendable. So the cost of sending someone down to watered whips is normally cheaper to plant new whips each time. However, I think if you're already going down to water the other trees, you can water the whips at the same time. But you wouldn't send someone down just to water those on their own. It wouldn't be cost effective to do so. Where the whips are being planted, it's in between the gaps in the hedgerows, so we couldn't replant the standards as well. But I do take your point, Councillor Standard. We'll be watering this time. I think that'll make the difference.
Just to come back about watering, if you put a tree in the correct compost, the correct soil, it will soak in the water. Clay does not soak in water. Clay lets it sit there, and it will sit there in water and rot away. That's the whole point of putting them in with a mature ball of root to them, and it will soak the water in and drain the water out, as you very well know. But with clay soil, it is literally, we spent 3 days putting in 3,000 whips, and 80% of those are dead. What is the point? I spent that time, I spent hours putting these whips in, and to see that they're dead, it's not a good practice. And that has been brought to my attention from others that have been with me and seen it. And so I'm asking you to forget about the whips and to put in a bit more of mature trees and to cancel these whips, because we will lose 80% of them, and it won't help us at all.
Councillor Gooding.
It won't surprise you that I actually concur with what Councillor Stanley's saying, the waste of time of putting the whips in, and not only that, the fact that they are wrapped in that mustard-coloured type, it's plastic, not cardboard. I spend my time picking them up, and I have reported this to you both. I spend my time picking them up because they have been lost from the whips that are planted in Ashington, where you're talking about, and they then become part of the rubbish that you're collecting later on. So there's a vicious hamster's wheel going round here that is just wasting valuable time and effort. And I'm sorry to say that, but I do agree.
Yep, I can assure you, councillors, I have spoken to Marcus about this problem with the whips, because Ashington is my local area, and I have walked around it, and I was round there the other week, and I have highlighted this with the team, and I spoke to Inca about it at length, because Inca's been looking after them. So the team are aware of the situation with the whips, and I have brought it up on a number of occasions, and I will be taking this up with them separately going forward. Anyone else? Okay. I will now move the recommendations set out on page 89 of the report. R1, to approve the expenditure of £86,000 to undertake the hedgerow and pollard restoration project in King George's V Playfield in Ashington. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Marriott, thank you. Show of hands for. Against? Abstain? Yep. Okay, that motion has been carried. Where are we? Yep, what's the numbers? 5 for, 3 against, 2 abstain. Right. Item 10 is the Rochford Play Strategy, and the report begins on page 99. This report provides an update on the development and implementation of the Rochford Play Space Strategy, which aims to ensure high quality, accessible and inclusive play provision across the district. The strategy is being developed in partnership with LUC, which is the Land Use Consultants, and informed by national policy, local needs and community engagement. And I invite questions from committee members.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry to keep on with this play area. Do we expect the play areas to be better than what they are at this standing moment, where matching has come apart, the level of the ground is somewhat disputable, and lack of maintenance, basically, in these play spaces? Are we to expect this, not only this consultation, but the perception that the play provision will be better than what it is at the moment? Thank you.
I'll start off by saying that the Ashington Play Space was recently refurbished, and the equipment that they've put in there is more accessible, and it's more related to people with special needs. The matting has all been totally replaced, and they've put down a spongy type surface that we will hope, wet pour, as you know, it will last a lot longer. But I will ask Adam if he's got anything to add to that.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. I mean, in the long run, yes, I think the ambition is that all of our play spaces will be of a better standard, better quality. I think this play strategy gives us that direction of how we get to installing those better play spaces in consultation with other appropriate bodies, particularly people like Rochford Housing Association, those that have influence within local play within the district. So yes, I agree that the ambition is to strive for them better play spaces. The consultation and this strategy is the vehicle to get there, if that makes sense.
I fully appreciate the Chair's comment of what he's just said, but there are play spaces that are really in a bad situation. And having consultations isn't really, I don't see a consultation is necessary when the work needs to be done and that amount of money needs to be spent on the play spaces themselves. However, I do realise that we need consultation with residents to identify how good the play space is, how safe it is, and what have you. But nevertheless, do I understand correctly that the play spaces that we've got in not only in Ashington but everywhere else across the district will be improved forthwith? Thank you.
So, Councillor, you probably recall there was the place-based replacement strategy that came to committee, I think, probably about 18 months ago. So that is still being undertaken. I think if you look in the chair's update as well, you'll find that I think we have 4 or 5 sites that we intend to do work on or award contracts for this winter with a view to doing the works next summer. So the play strategy and the consultation does not delay any of the works that we've already importantly identified. It is very much to build on it, and it is to make sure, I think, that we identify where there are areas of priority. And so that may be Rochford sites, it may be, as Mr Aldridge here has already alluded to, housing sites or parish sites as well. So I think the report, I think one of the positive things about the report is actually we're looking at, you've probably got enough play spaces, I think is actually one of the more encouraging things that the report says, because quite a few districts and boroughs actually find they haven't even got enough play spaces. So it's about the quality, but at least we've got enough of them. It's about improving the quality of those in terms of accessibility for more users, but also to make sure they don't overlap. So, you know, for example, you don't need to put a set of swings in every play space. You know, if you've got a parish next door to a district, why wouldn't you be ensuring that what you're providing between the two is coordinated in such a way that you get a good play experience across the two areas rather than producing the same equipment in both? It's them sort of things we're looking at.
I only mentioned this, Chair, is that there are 2 play areas that in my district. One is in Rawriff, where the park is, and the other one is at Swain. And they're both in need a lot of work done. And that's where I think we need to concentrate our efforts to. Thank you.
Councillor Goodin, did you have a question?
No, I welcome the play space developments, so thank you. I do believe that there is Clements Hall 1 forthcoming very shortly. Do we have a timeline on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so the Clements Hall 1 is due for this financial year for the contract to be awarded. We're meeting all suppliers next week to visit all sites with a view to award contracts in the new year, with a view to start installing as soon as the weather improves.
Okay, members, I'll move the recommendation set out on page 99. Did you want another? No? Move the recommendation set out on page 99 of the report. R1, for the committee to note the contents of this report. Is that noted? Thank you, members. R2, that the committee approves a consultation with residents and with other place-based providers to seek views and understand the perception of play provision in Rochford District, and that the findings of the consultation are presented at the next available committee. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stanley. Show of hands for. That's unanimous, members. Thank you very much. That motion is carried. Item 11 is fees and charges for 26-27. The report begins on page 199. The report ensures fees and charges made by the Council for various services are reviewed on an annual basis by the relevant committee relating to the service providers. I ask for, excuse me, members. I invite questions from committee members.
Thank you, Chairman. Just really for my own benefit, the uplift is 3.8% on the fees, and that's across all the fees that we've got. When was that inflation rate taken from? Because obviously inflation changes month to month.
I think if I recollect, it was August this year. I mean, you're right. There's always going to be a snapshot where you take it can be up and down on that. But it's the nature of the reporting cycle that we just got to pick a point. But it tends to be around about then when the reports are written. and each year. So there'll be peaks and troughs throughout that time, won't there? So sometimes you'll lose slightly, and sometimes you'll gain slightly. But that's the nature of unfortunately setting against a sort of a set rate like that.
So my follow-up question really is, what happens if inflation far exceeds 3.8? Because that would leave us short, wouldn't it?
I think you do tend to have reserves and contingency for doing so. So I can actually recollect in a previous year where we've set things, contract prices, for example, at 2%, and they've come in at far higher because of the inflation come April suddenly rocketed. So you do have to have some degree of contingency in your sort of budgets, which is it's more pretty a question for the 151 officer than myself, but he does obviously make sure there's reserves to address those sort of buffers to buffer those sort of shortfalls.
Do we have any other questions, members? Okay, I will now move the recommendation set out on page 199 of the report. R1, agree to the proposed charges for 2026 to 27 as attached in Appendix A to D, subject to the annual budget setting process. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Show of hands for. That's unanimous. That motion is carried. Thank you, members. Item 12 is the committee work programme, and the report begins on page 239. This report sets out the work programme for the committee for 25-26 municipal year. Do I have any questions from committee members? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a request because could we please have a report produced on the progress of the Parks for Nature programme?
Yep, that can be done. I shall badger Marcus to get that done for the next meeting. Do we have any other questions on that? Okay, that report is for noting members. So that concludes our business for this evening. I thank you for your attendance. The meeting ended at 20:22. I'd like to wish everyone, if I don't see you before, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. Thank you very much for your attendance this evening.